You are listening to a Sustainable World Radio podcast. Sustainable World Radio brings you in-depth interviews, news, and commentary about positive solutions to environmental challenges. Solutions that adhere to the permaculture ethics of earth care, people care, fair share. Are you interested in learning more about permaculture projects around the globe? How to plant a food forest? Restorative design or ethnobotany? Then stay tuned for Sustainable World Radio. I'm your host and producer, Jill Cloutier. I am here at Santa Barbara Permaculture Network headquarters in Santa Barbara, California with Wes Roe and Margie Bushman. And Wes and Margie are going to be talking today about the IPC India 2017. It's the International Permaculture Conference and Convergence. Welcome to the program, Margie and Wes.
Thank you, Jill.
Happy
to be here.
Yes.
Who wants to start with explaining to listeners what is the International Permaculture Conference and Convergence?
So the International Permaculture Conferences and Convergences have been going on since 1989. At this point, they happen biannually. They started earlier times, and then there was a 9-year hiatus where they stopped happening for a while. Started up again in 2005. That's the first convergence that Wes and I attended, and that was in Croatia and other nearby neighboring countries. And we were so impressed with that that we right away got involved and began to talk about how to make them continue and go on. And there had been many people putting, it's a huge endeavor when you take on convening one of these. And so we started something called the International Permaculture Support Committee.
So you help support the people putting these on, the organizers.
Putting them on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think I read on the website that it switches back and forth from different areas of the world.
Yeah, it goes from north to south, east to west, and it's also, if it hasn't been held in a region, then that gets priority. And when you're applying to be a host, there is a whole form requirements that lets us know if you're capable of doing it. And one of the things we require for a host to do is actually hold a regional convergence before. So the organizers now, to be a host, make their first application 4 years before, and then have to come back 2 years after to then make another presentation. So it's a long process, and a lot of them say, why can't we do it quicker? We found that it takes 4 years to actually organize a region to actually host, because you're bringing over 60 countries from around the world and from every walk in life. So it is, and you're organizing an event not just for your region, you're inviting the whole world. So it takes time.
And it sounds like the Olympics almost.
Yeah.
Yes, and we said it's permaculture is this global grassroots movement of a sort. It really is. And so these conveners are just the permaculture associations or groups from around the world that step forward to do this. And we're always amazed at who's brave enough to actually do it. Yeah. Because it's much more complicated than holding a regional convergence or even a national convergence where you know everyone from your country or you know the practices but when you invite the world, you're also needing to tend to the participants' needs and what they'll need to get there and the visas and all the things that can happen.
So if someone's listening right now and they're interested in permaculture, can you give them an idea of what it would be like to attend this upcoming convergence and conference?
It is probably the most exciting conference you'll ever go to because it has two elements. The conference is held usually in a city, and that's where it's open to the public. And politicians, all these different officials are invited to be part of it. And it's for the region, like it would be in India, to showcase permaculture in India. So it really becomes a very powerful thing. And the convergences are always located usually in a rural area. And there will be anywhere from, in Cuba, it was like 500-600 people. So India will probably be in that range. the thing that we do when people are always worried about, travel and their carbon footprint is like these conferences happen every 2 years, and what they do to offset it is all the food is grown in the area. So we're fed we create actually an economy of food. And right now, in India, they're actually have a farm, and they're growing the food for the conference and the convergence. And that's one of the things with whenever we go, we try to create that economic way of giving the money back to the community, so that the hosts, in a way, enrich their area by having us there. So it's like it's bringing nutrients. We bring the dollar nutrients, and then they bring the food, everything else that helps their region economically. So it's really well thought out, and this has been something that we developed over years. For when you apply to be a host, these are the questions: where is your food? Where are you producing food? And it's regional, so it's very special that way.
Each Convergence conference is entirely unique, and it is up to the host country, the host organization, to sort of set the tone. They can be very different from one another, but as Wes was saying, now this convergence in India will be outside of Hyderabad, where the conference will be held. And there is a 96-acre farm that just 2 years ago was completely degraded soil, and a couple who own it had been learning from Aranya Agricultural Alternatives. They are the host organization, and they had learned from their farm, and they offered to become involved in a 2-year process of bringing back the soil, mimicking what Aranya Farm is all about, but beginning to produce this food that they knew that this international was going to need to provide for the attendees.
And is this where part of the convergence or conference is going to be held?
Sure, that's going to be the IPC village, they're calling it. Padma and Narsana Kopala, that are the hosts and founders of Aranya Agricultural Alternatives, they want people attending the convergence to learn a lot of the traditional skills. And we already saw some of them when we were at another convergence with them. They show how in India they save seed, many, many things that will, those 5 days that you have to be together, that you can learn some of those.
Sounds wonderful. It's fascinating. And what is the difference between the conference and the convergence?
The conference is more of a public of the region, and also what's happening around the world. And the themes are set up by the organizers, whereas the convergence is in-house. That's for permaculture people to bring their projects from around the world and present them. And so this is a chance for all these permaculturists, like I said, from 60 countries, every religion, every kind of thing, every kind of country, from first world to two-thirds world, from desert to tropical. It is amazing. So from what I've seen from the speakers and who's coming, we have a rich diversity pretty much from everywhere in the world. And one of the areas that we're seeing a big increase in now coming is China. And for the first time, we're getting Beirut, we're getting Lebanon. We're getting a few countries that we didn't. Russia is coming back. East Timor. Just some special places where things, permaculture has been around for many years. But when we do the convergences, the conferences and convergences, and we move them around, it gives people in each region of the world, they can get to it easier. It's not so expensive. And so what happens at the conference and convergence, the majority of people there are from that region, from that area. And then there's a rest of us come from different parts of the world. But the majority of people who will be there will be from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal. All those countries in there already have representatives, and they're going to make presentations.
And how does someone become a representative to go?
Everyone's welcome to attend.
Yeah.
And then Wes and I belong to the Friends of the International Permaculture Convergences, which was established to help fund scholarships to help delegates from around the world who might not be able to afford the trip or might need some assistance.
Yeah. And so this year was our first year of actually having an international fundraiser through FIPC, and we raised approximately $10,000. The fundraiser is still on. It's for scholarships for delegates to the IPC India, and you can go to CrowdRise and just type that in, and we are still accepting donations because this is going to be open right through to the next convergences, because we always need that money. Sometimes we don't know how many we're going to get there, so sometimes we can get 20, which just takes a lot of resources because flights and everything else. But this year we had a special organization called Lush Soap that really helped, made a big donation, which allowed us to have people from around the world and also from India. So their big thing was to get Indian farmers, and Lush Soap is a company that its owners are out of the permaculture movement, and they really have been focusing on buying product, creating farms, permaculture farms from around the world, and they go and help them produce product for the soap company. So this is something Lush has been doing, but Lush is becoming more involved in the international convergence, and we're trying to get more permaculture companies to be part of it. And this year, first time, Nativa made a donation to the scholarship fund. So we're starting to see that kind of representation from different parts of the world. And it was a big undertaking to do it. And we feel it was very successful. And it'll be a model for us moving around into the future. We're very happy with that.
Mm-hmm. And so the theme is toward healthy societies. Mm-hmm. Some of the, I don't know if it's like topics that are going to be covered or sub-themes are women as agents of change, sustainable water resource management, permaculture as social responsibility. Do you two want to talk? I mean, the list goes on. I could keep reading the list. Do you want to talk about any of those in particular?
Yes, we're very excited about the women as agents of change. And the keynote for the conference will be Vandana Shiva, who will be talking about that. Also, Robin Francis, who was, along with Bill Mollison, this is the 30th anniversary of permaculture being in India. And Bill Mollison came at the request of Dr. Venkat. But Robin Francis and Bill Mollison taught the first, as I understand, permaculture design course there. Women in India, there are issues about women, like all over the world, and that right now with the problem of suicide, farmers committing suicide because of the soils being depleted and the long drought, and many other things. The unfortunate part of that is that the women, when they become widows, don't have legal status. And that's one of the things that Aranya Agricultural Alternatives has been addressing for 15 years or so as a part of the work they do.
And they have at their farm there, there's village, and that's the women farmers, and they'll be the people that greet us, and we'll be working, and they'll be part of the convergence. So the women farmers, that's really important. Each convergence is really, when we were in Africa, they brought the school teachers from all the primary schools and secondary schools who have permaculture gardens. And so each convergence brings the people who are really on the ground making changes in their community.
So this can really have profound change for the community and the area where this takes place.
Yeah, very much so.
Change.
And Wes mentioned earlier that a requirement of hosting an IPC is that you hold a regional. And 2 years ago, they held their regional, and you can watch that. It's available on YouTube, and they managed to bring, it just got a huge interest of permaculture happening and recognizing how long it had been in India now, 30 years. That's remarkable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, you were talking about the themes. One of the most powerful ones that has developed around in the permaculture movement at the convergences, and it has been articulated, is permaculture and climate change. And so starting in Jordan and then in Cuba, there were committees and groups got together, and there is now a paper, Permaculture Solutions for Climate Change. And you can find that on the internet. And this is permaculture's answer to addressing climate change. And this came out of all the convergences pooling all these people around the world and how climate affected them, and then everybody's input. And then as a community, we stepped forward for the first time and started to address big issues. Where this has been more powerful is this was then taken to the Commonwealth countries, and they adopted this permaculture model for changes for climate throughout the Commonwealth countries. And this was done in 2015 in England when we were at the International there. So this was also another side event, as we call. So the other one is the grassroots permaculture in action, and that's just everybody coming in and describing all the different things. I mean, Julius Pitti will be there, Yay. And he'll be describing his work in Zimbabwe in the drylands, and he has built an amazing center there now. His work was in Chimanimani for many years, in that community, and is interesting. That was had rain and was a wet area, though very challenged because of the landscape had been cleared and destroyed through war and cutting down trees for charcoal and food. And so he's moved from there to the drylands, and he's made this transition and set up a school and a whole training area, and he'll be there talking about those things. John Naziri will be there talking about his work in really challenged communities in South Africa. There'll be people from East Timor talking about their work, because it was such a challenge when East Timor got its freedom finally and rebuilding its country. And permaculture has been really driving the change by training the young people in the community. They actually have big gatherings where they're like permaculture camps, where they do all this training of the young people to integrate them back into their communities and start retraining. Because that war, what we find out with civil wars and those wars, farmers are the ones that are really affected, put off the land, killed, and that knowledge disappears in your community. And so permaculture recognizes that, and then East Timor is redeveloping that energy around agriculture for the community.
It sounds really fascinating, and like a very diverse group of presenters and people attending. Yeah. If someone's listening and they have a permaculture design certificate, they can go to this conference or convergence?
Absolutely, yes. You just need the PDC to attend the convergence. And as Wes was saying earlier, to go to the conference, that's not necessary. And as a part of all of these international permaculture convergences, a PDC is offered beforehand. So it's a really interesting play, to go take a PDC in an international setting and learn from teachers in another country. So that part is really great too.
Mm-hmm. These are our edge events, we call them. This was developed starting in Cuba a bit, and then England, and where organizations help organize what we call different events around, so that the organizers don't have to do everything. So there's now going to be a teacher's course. There's going to be the permaculture teacher's course for the first time in India, and will be taught by a really diverse group of permaculture teachers from around the world. The PDC is really exciting because you're going to be taught by so many people from around the world. Sometimes there's 9 or 10 teachers, and they're from every part of the world. And some of them are like what we call permaculture pioneers. They've been at it for 30 years or more, and they come there and teach and give their time. There's also going to be what we call edge events for after and before the thing, and there's going to be a tour right after, and then there's going to be, I think, there's going to be 2 courses at Aranya Farm after, and one's around water, and then there's an advanced permaculture design course, and there's also going to be a social permaculture course offered too. So this is
spend the month.
Yes. This is what happens. In England Margie and I when we were in England, we did the edge event that took us to Totnes, where Transition Town really grew, and we spent 5 days there. And so what happens with all these different events, it allows you then to be able to go to take more courses, interact with people. And the neat thing about all these things is the groups you're with are everybody from around the world is there, and so you have built long-lasting friendships, And for Margie and I, we get to know all these different people, and we're able then to harvest their incredible knowledge. And when we need some help in our region, we bring them here to talk to our community. And, you know, in a sense, we brought Roberto Perez here, and he met with the Community Environmental Council and explained how Cuba responds to hurricanes. And it was totally different than ours. And it's because Cuba has only so much electrical capacity, they have to be very careful how they do it. And so he described to the CEC how you would protect your grid and then bring it back up, and how Cuba had developed a microgrids and along with their other grids. And so we're going to face these climate challenges. In fact, we had our first microburst.
And just all the hurricanes and everything now. So this is really important knowledge on how to adapt and become more resilient. Now, the dates for this conference are November 25th through the 26th.
Yeah.
And then the Convergence is November 27th through December 2nd.
Yes.
And it sounds like there's also courses before and after.
Yeah.
And I would suggest going to the IPC India website. There's a wealth of information on there. You just keep going deeper and deeper. They describe the farm tours that you can do a self-tour, or you can go on the ones that are offered. Lots of information on that website.
It's ipcindia2017.org.
And also wanted to mention that there is just a dynamic volunteer crew there now, and you can look at some of the volunteers on the website as well, and that there's still the need for more volunteers. And you can take a look on the website to see the ones that are already there and what they're involved with and what they're doing. And it seems like really an exciting way if you want to learn more about permaculture, learn more about another culture, meet people from around the world. This would be a great thing to volunteer, be a part of.
And what else was very interesting was the hands-on experience that people are going to be getting in traditional Indian practices, which were seed saving, tribal farming, herbal medicine, water divination, and pitcher irrigation, which sounds really interesting. And so it's really from the country where you're going that you're going to learn this traditional knowledge.
In India right now has just a challenge with water. They are probably more severe challenge with groundwater than we can even imagine. And so that whole thing around permaculture about infiltration of water, designing landscapes that capture water is so important, because their population there, that's a lot of pressure to look after people and feed people, and especially if your ground table and your water there and the quality of water is really suffering. And I think, Margie, you could mention Sadhguru.
Well, we're impressed right now with a Rally for Rivers campaign done by an Indian yogi mystic guy named Sadhguru, and he just completed that campaign and made all of us aware that the rivers are not running perennial anymore, and that most of what has occurred has happened in the last 30 years or so. And so the Poland farm that will be the IPC Convergence village, when they got there and it was degraded, there was no water. And that with the earthworks that they're doing and the capturing of the rain on the land, on the soil, they're already bringing it back. And those are the solutions that permaculture brings to the table.
Sounds wonderful. Mm-hmm. For people who are wondering what they need to travel, I noticed that the website does have details on that.
Yeah.
And so you need your passport, and the visa you can get very quickly. Can you get that on arrival?
No, you have to apply. But the thing is, it depends what country you come from. So take a look at it. I'm afraid it's always geared towards the Western countries, so everyone else has to take a look at it. I don't think you'll run into the problems you'd run into trying to come to the United States.
At this juncture.
Yeah, right. No. Yeah.
Okay, so and so how to register for this event, is that at the website as well?
Yes.
Margie and Wes, do you have anything else you'd like to add about the conference and convergence in India this year?
I just want to say that India looks like the most fascinating country. And I just read recently that Rick Steves, the travel author, and he has a television or a radio program, he said that India is his favorite country to travel in. There's reservations by many about going there, but Hyderabad is a very modern city. It's sort of the high-tech region, and you can fly directly to Hyderabad. I think, as usual, what Wes and I are trying to share is that travel is the best teacher, and that India is this country that it's this emerging superpower. It's the largest democracy in the world. It's the 7th largest economy. So what India does has a huge impact on the rest of the world. And with these global international permaculture convergences, that's what we're trying to convey, that we can stay in our backyards and work on our own issues, but really we truly are a global society now. And what happens in the rest of the world affects us. For instance, China, and what it's do with its manufacturing, it is something like the world's, or let's just say Los Angeles. A quarter of Los Angeles' smog comes from China. So it's not just what we do that's bad, or what the whole world now has to review a lot of these environmental issues.
And as in the case of, the globe coming together for the COP15, this is further the permaculture drawing the communities together to work with each other. And this has been a very powerful. Permaculture's first convergence was in, I think, 1983. And then from then on has moved around the world, north, south, east, west. You can see all the various places it's been. Margie and I were very fortunate. We went to Croatia. We got to see a country that had, was really in dynamic change after the communist system fell apart. So these are the things. A lot of times you end up in these countries where they're going through amazing changes, and you're part of it. We always look forward to it, and we love working. Margie and I just decided on that we would really invest our time in making sure the organizers were helped and bringing a whole group of people around to do that. And I think from, creating this organization, Friends of the International Permaculture Conference, or Convergence and Conference, to raise money for the convergences, and holding our first crowd fund, and then also having a partnering group called the International Permaculture Convergence Council working with us. We are becoming a global movement, and we're actually establishing the structure. It took us a while. It's like any group. It's like, how do we present ourselves to the world, and how do we make bigger change? Because we're going to need to step up, all of us. And I know my commitment for my life is to be so involved with this, with the permaculture, and helping move these solutions, because permaculture is very solution orientated, to make the changes, just to be part of this more positive way of interacting during these times that challenge us so much. But then what else will we be doing?
So if you're interested in attending this event, if you're interested in donating, is the donation website the same as the IPCindia2017.org for the crowdfunding?
No, it's different.
Okay.
Yeah, you can, if you want to, you can go to Santa Barbara Permaculture Network, click on IPC, and that'll take you right into all the information you need. The CrowdRise. And the special thing that we have been doing is honoring Ali Sharif. That's part of the crowdfund. So you can make a donation that really, really makes sure that Ali's great efforts to bring people from around the world is continued. And Ali was a dear friend of ours, Margie and I, and we knew him for many years and really admired his work. Very special soul, and we want to honor him. And at the Convergence, we will honor all the different permaculture people who have passed, because this is a time for the community to go to honor people that are leaving us too, and celebrating new people who come, which is always great.
Which could be some of the people listening right now, which is so exciting. Yeah. And so, Margie, do you want to close with something?
Sure. I just wanted to say that there's an energy in all of our little dollars coming together to support these things. And what it is when you do that is it's a diversity of participants from a diversity of regions around the world for a diversity of ideas and solutions. And that really the life and civilization they save may be your own. So give generously. I mean, give $10, give $20, or if you're able, give more. But really it is the global permaculture convergence movement coming together to support each other. It's truly a grassroots movement. There is no funding from government or institutions. It's just us people.
It's wonderful. For people who are tuning in right now and maybe thinking, what is permaculture? Does one of you or both of you want to give your definition?
Well, we always say and want to emphasize that it's a design system and it's an ecological design. And it's looking to nature, looking to nature's patterns and how to design in harmony with nature. But we always, on our website, we list one of our favorite permaculturists, Ben Haggard. His quote is, "Permaculture, a design system that reconciles human communities with the ecological imperatives of a living planet." And it's making the point that humans are a part of this, that we are a part of the picture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we are, and we just need to know that we have evolved with the earth, and we need each other, and we need to stay on this planet, because where they want to send us, that don't look too good.
PC Convergence on Mars.
Yeah, PC Convergence on Mars. Next.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us on the show again.
You've been listening to a Sustainable World Radio podcast. You can find us online at sustainableworldradio.com and also on iTunes. For more information about permaculture and ecology, visit the Sustainable World Media YouTube channel, where you'll find videos about permaculture, aquaponics, organic gardening, rainwater harvesting, and much, much more. Sustainable World Radio is a listener-supported program. If you like what we do, please consider making a donation to the show. I'm your host and producer, Jill Cloutier, and thank you so much for listening.